In the last few years, something historic has happened. A nation once defined by peace is becoming one of the most formidable military powers on Earth. A country that swore never again after the horrors of World War II, whose constitution once forbade war itself, is now spending record sums, building offensive capabilities, and reshaping its defense strategy like never before in post-war history. This isn't just about Japan. It's part of a global security shift that could impact India, China, the Indo-Pacific, and even everyday life in your neighborhood. Let's unpack it all, steadily, deeply, with crystal clear examples. But Japan didn't choose peace suddenly. To understand why, we must go back into history. After World War II ended in 1945, Japan was completely defeated and devastated. Its cities lay in ruins, its economy destroyed, and millions had died, including hundreds of thousands from the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In response to that catastrophe, when Japan's leaders wrote a new constitution in 1947, they included a powerful peace clause known as Article 9. Article 9 says that Japan renounces war forever and will never again maintain war potential or use force to settle international disputes. Basically saying Japan would not build a traditional offensive army or wage war. This wasn't just another policy. It became Japan's identity for more than 7 decades. To the world, Japan became known as the country that turned its back on war and chose peace. Japanese people embraced this idea strongly because the memory of atomic devastation deeply shaped their national psyche. But that came with a consequence. While Japan couldn't build a full military, it still needed protection against real threats, especially during the Cold War era and after. That's when Japan signed a U.S.-Japan Mutual Security Treaty in 1951. This treaty allowed the United States to keep military bases and troops in Japan in exchange for protecting Japan if it were attacked. The strategy was clear. Japan would focus on rebuilding its economy. The United States would provide military protection. This arrangement helped Japan become an economic and technology giant while remaining militarily under U.S. security. Because of this setup, for decades, Japan didn't worry about building an offensive army. It depended on strong ties with the U.S., not just militarily, but politically and economically. Many Japanese leaders believed peace and prosperity could only be achieved through economic growth and diplomacy, not military force. But now, Japan isn't just talking defense, it's rewriting the rules of its own peace. Even though Article 9 is still technically part of Japan's constitution, the meaning of pacifism has changed drastically in recent years. One powerful example from 2025-2026 shows this clearly. Japan is planning to deploy long-range missiles with a range of about 1,000 kilometers that can strike targets in North Korea and China as part of its evolving defense posture. These missiles are meant to give Japan a counterstrike capability, meaning, if attacked, Japan could hit back at threats before they land on Japanese soil. This is a huge shift because traditionally Japan was not even supposed to have long-range strike weapons under its pacifist identity. But now, rising threats from neighbors and doubts about how reliable U.S. protection might be, especially due to recent criticism of the treaty by U.S. leaders, have pushed Japan to upgrade its defensive and offensive posture. So even though Article 9 exists on paper, Japan today is building military capabilities that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Not because Japan suddenly wants war, but because the security environment around it has changed dramatically. Now, this might seem like distant geopolitics. What does Japan's defense policy have to do with me? But here's the powerful life connection that directly affects everyone. Your cost of living, jobs, and even technology prices can be influenced by changes in global security policies. Think about everyday things you use, like your smartphone, laptop, cars, semiconductors, and internet services. Japan is a major producer of key components used in these technologies. When nations shift their economies toward defense and security, it often means manufacturing priorities change. Global supply chains adjust. Prices of tech products can fluctuate. Countries renegotiate trade commitments. For example, If Japan's factories focus more on producing advanced defense equipment, the global supply of chips and electronic components might decrease, or prices might go up because the world is now competing for the same resources. These changes eventually show up in the prices of goods and services we all use daily. Similarly, when tensions rise and countries reorganize their economies for defense, like Japan is doing, international markets become more volatile. And that can affect fuel prices, shipping costs, and even inflation in everyday items like food, electronics, and fuel. So even if you never pick up a rifle or think about military budgets, Japan's shift away from pacifism can affect your job prospects, your expenses, and even how much your favorite gadgets cost. These global security decisions are not just for politicians. They ripple into household budgets worldwide. Japan's strategy is no longer only about defending its shores. It's about deterring threats before they arise. Japan has just taken perhaps the biggest shift in its defense policy since World War II. For the fiscal year 2026, the Japanese government approved a record budget of more than over $58 billion, the highest in the nation's history. This budget is not just a small annual increase. It reflects a decade-long transformation of how Japan thinks about security and military capability. Traditionally, Japan spent roughly 1% of its GDP on defense, a commitment that reflected its post-war pacifist constitution. But now, Tokyo is pushing this to 2% of GDP, a benchmark usually seen only in major military powers like NATO countries. This goal, originally planned for 2027, is now being reached earlier than expected because of rising threats in the region. The 2026 budget marks the fourth consecutive year of increases under Japan's 5-year defense buildup plan. The government says this level of spending is the minimum needed in the most complex security environment since World War II. Japan's new defense budget isn't just about maintaining basic protection. It is about building real combat and deterrent capabilities. Here's what it's being used for. Number 1. Strike back, standoff capability. Japan is investing heavily in long-range missiles that can hit enemy targets before they land on Japanese soil. Instead of merely defending territory, these weapons give Japan the ability to attack threats from a distance, a huge shift from past policy. A concrete example is the purchase of Type 12 surface-to-ship missiles with roughly 1,000 kilometers range. These weapons allow Japan to hit hostile warships or launch sites far from its inland cities, something unimaginable before. Number 2. Drones and unmanned systems. Japan is spending billions on advanced drone networks, including aerial, sea surface, and underwater drones. Under a coastal defense system called SHIELD, these drones will track and respond to threats automatically, making defense more flexible and smart. Number 3. Space and aerospace forces. Part of the budget is also being used to upgrade its air self-defense force into an aerospace self-defense force, boosting satellites and space monitoring systems, which are crucial for modern warfare and early warning systems. And this isn't just a policy tweak. This matters because it reshapes power balances across East Asia and beyond. This budget pushes Japan toward becoming the third largest military spender on Earth, behind only the United States and China, a position that would have been almost unthinkable a decade ago. Japan has effectively moved from a strictly defensive posture, one focused only on protecting its own soil, to one that integrates active deterrence, offense-ready technologies, and an expanded reach that can help prevent conflict before it starts. A clear recent example of this shift is the December 2025 budget approval by the Japanese government. Record-breaking 9 trillion yen allocation. This is not just an incremental change. It's a fundamental strategic pivot. Country leaders publicly state that they cannot ignore regional threats any longer, especially from China's expanding military footprint in the Pacific and its assertiveness around Taiwan and the East China Sea. So what dangers is Japan really responding to? And why is it rewriting its defense story? Today, Japan's surrounding neighborhood has changed completely. The countries around Japan are arming themselves rapidly, and some are openly showing hostility. Japan is now facing threats from 3 directions at the same time. Let's understand them one by one, in the simplest way possible. North Korea is Japan's closest and most unpredictable threat. What is North Korea doing? It regularly tests ballistic missiles. Many of these missiles fly directly over Japan. Some land in the sea near Japan. North Korea also has nuclear weapons. Imagine this. You're sitting in your home, and suddenly your government sends an emergency alert saying, "Missile detected overhead. Take shelter." This is not imagination. This has already happened multiple times in Japan. Why this scares Japan? North Korea is not just testing weapons for practice. It uses missiles as political threats. Japan knows that if even one missile fails or is misfired, it could hit a Japanese city. On top of that, there's a painful history. Abductions of Japanese citizens. In past decades, North Korean agents kidnapped Japanese civilians, including teenagers from Japanese soil. Some were taken to train spies. Many never returned. This created a deep fear inside Japan. If they can kidnap our people and fire missiles over us, can passive defense really protect us? That question changed Japan's thinking forever. China is Japan's biggest long-term challenge. What China has changed? China has transformed its military into one of the largest and most advanced forces in the world. Massive navy with aircraft carriers. Frequent military drills near Japanese islands. Missiles landing close to Japan's maritime zones. Constant pressure near disputed islands. China's navy is now so large that Japanese leaders worry it could block important sea routes Japan depends on for food, oil, and trade. Why this is dangerous for Japan? Japan is an island nation. Almost everything Japan uses, fuel, food, raw materials, comes through the sea. If China controls nearby waters, Japan's trade could be choked. Fuel and food prices could skyrocket. Japan's economy could be paralyzed without a single bullet fired. That's why Japan sees China not just as a military threat, but as an economic survival threat. Japan's message is clear. If we cannot protect our sea lanes, we cannot survive. Russia may be far in the news, but it is very close to Japan geographically. The Kuril Islands dispute. Japan and Russia both claim ownership of a group of islands called the Kuril Islands. These islands are strategically located, rich in fishing resources, close to important shipping routes. Russia has militarized these islands, placing missiles and troops there. Why Ukraine changed Japan's thinking? When Russia invaded Ukraine, Japan realized something shocking. A major war can still happen in today's world. For decades, Japan believed large wars were a thing of the past. Ukraine proved that belief wrong. Japan now understands. Treaties and promises cannot guarantee peace. Only preparedness can. Why these three threats together are so serious? Japan is facing North Korea from the west, China from the south and east, Russia from the north. Very few countries face three nuclear-armed powers at once. That's why Japan believes doing nothing is more dangerous than preparing. Japan is not becoming powerful because it wants war. Japan is becoming powerful because its neighborhood no longer guarantees peace. And in today's world, even peaceful countries are learning one hard truth. Security is no longer a choice, it is a necessity. Japan isn't just changing policy, it's building tomorrow's military with tomorrow's technology. For decades, Japan followed one rule in defense. We will only protect ourselves, nothing more. That meant short-range weapons, no ability to strike far, no power projection beyond its borders. But today, that rulebook has completely changed. Japan isn't just buying more weapons, it's changing how it thinks about security. Let's break this down very simply. Earlier, Japan's military was like a helmet. It protected the head, but only after the punch came. Now, Japan wants distance. That's why it's focusing on cruise missiles, weapons that fly long distances and hit targets precisely. Standoff weapons launched from far away, without exposing soldiers or ships. This means Japan can now respond before a threat reaches its cities. Hypersonic missiles travel more than 5 times the speed of sound. Why does that matter? Because Traditional missile defense systems struggle to track them. Reaction time becomes extremely short. Deterrence increases automatically. Japan isn't saying, "We want to use these." It's saying, "Don't even think about attacking us." That's deterrence. Japan is investing heavily in aerial drones for surveillance and strike support, underwater drones to track submarines, unmanned systems, fewer soldiers at risk. This allows Japan to see threats early, especially in vast ocean areas where human patrols are difficult. Think of it as turning the entire surrounding sea into a smart security camera network. Earlier, space was only about satellites and communication. Now, Japan has dedicated space defense units, satellite protection systems, monitoring of enemy missile launches. Because modern wars don't start on land. They start with signals, satellites, and data. The clearest example of Japan's shift is the Type 12 missile. Earlier versions had limited range. Now the upgraded version has a range of around 1,000 kilometers. What does that mean in simple terms? Japan can target threats far before they come close. Deployment was much faster than originally planned. It signals urgency and seriousness. This is not panic. This is prepared deterrence. Japan isn't preparing to attack countries randomly. It is doing one thing: raising the cost of attacking Japan so high that no one wants to try. That's modern defense thinking. Think about how personal safety has changed in daily life. Earlier, one-door lock felt enough. A simple phone was enough. No need for backups. Today, you use biometric locks, two-factor authentication, cloud backups, GPS tracking, emergency alerts, not because you're paranoid, but because risks have evolved. Japan is doing the same. The world around it has changed. Faster threats, unpredictable neighbors, and new technology. So Japan upgraded from one lock a security system, hope preparedness. This is why Japan today looks almost unrecognizable compared to a decade ago. Japan didn't wake up one day and choose power. Power was forced upon it by a changing world. Until recently, Japan used to avoid strong language about military threats. Even when tensions existed, Japanese leaders spoke carefully, softly, and indirectly. But February 20th, 2026 marked a turning point. On that day, Sanai Takaichi, the new Prime Minister of Japan, delivered a speech that shocked many observers. Not because it was aggressive, but because it was open and honest. For the first time in years, Japan's top leadership publicly acknowledged pressure and coercion from China, and clearly said, Japan must prepare. Let's understand what she actually meant in very simple terms. Japan's security rules were written for a post-World War II world, when threats were slower and predictable. But today, missiles travel in minutes. Cyber attacks happen instantly. Satellites can be blinded. Gray zone pressure happens without war. Revising security policy means updating old laws to match modern threats, removing restrictions that delay response, allowing faster decision-making in emergencies. In short, old rules for a new world don't work anymore. Earlier, Japan planned defense upgrades over 10 to 15 years. Now the mindset is, threats won't wait, neither can we. Acceleration means faster missile deployments, faster technology adoption, faster integration with allies. This shows urgency, not panic but realism. Relaxing weapons export limits. For decades, Japan avoided selling weapons abroad due to pacifist principles. Now it wants limited exports because allies need compatible systems. Joint production lowers costs. Shared defense strengthens deterrence. This doesn't mean Japan becomes a global arms dealer. It means Japan becomes a trusted security partner. Stronger intelligence inside Japan. Earlier, Japan depended heavily on allies for intelligence. Now it wants domestic intelligence networks, cyber and counter-espionage units, better early warning systems. Because modern threats don't announce themselves. They hide, probe, and infiltrate. Think about how your behavior changes after a close call. Maybe you narrowly avoided an accident. Your phone got hacked once. Someone tried to scam you. Before that incident, you felt, it won't happen to me. After it, you change passwords, add security apps, become more alert. You don't become aggressive. You become prepared. That's exactly what Japan is experiencing. Decades of peace created comfort, but real-world warnings changed the mindset. Japan isn't choosing fear. It's choosing responsibility. And that's a lesson that applies not just to nations, but to every individual watching this video. This is the moment Japan stopped whispering and started preparing. For Tokyo and New Delhi, the strategic landscape isn't a threat, it's an opportunity. To understand why Japan and India are coming closer, first understand one simple idea. The world's power center is shifting to the Indo-Pacific, and whoever controls safety, technology, and trade here will shape the future. That's why Japan and India are not just doing symbolic friendship. They're building a security ecosystem. Think about how smart people plan their careers today. Earlier, one degree felt enough. One skill felt safe. One company felt permanent. Today, people learn multiple skills, build networks, keep backup options, collaborate across fields. Why? Because depending on one thing is risky. India is doing the same at national level. By partnering with Japan, India reduces risk, gains new skills, becomes more resilient. Just like in personal life, smart growth comes from strong, reliable partnerships. Japan brings technology. India brings scale. Together, they shape the Indo-Pacific future. Japan's shift from strict pacifism to a balanced defense with strike capability shows that no country can take peace for granted. Geopolitics affects everyone. Security strategies evolve with threats. Economic stability and defense are deeply linked. This evolution is unfolding before our eyes, and it's changing the balance of power not just in East Asia, but across global geopolitics. Before you leave, remember this. Japan's story isn't just about weapons or wars. It's about a truth that applies to everyone's life. You don't lock your home because you expect danger. You don't save money because you want problems. You prepare because the world is unpredictable. Japan is doing the same, just on a national scale. Today's global decisions affect your job, prices, technology, and future more than ever before. And that's why understanding geopolitics is no longer optional. If you want simple, honest explanations of how world events connect to your life, subscribe to this channel. Because in a fast-changing world, being informed is the real power. See you in the next video.